UFC 286 is this Saturday, and this is my full card predictions. I'm going to be going through each fight, starting at the prelims all the way to the top of the card. And I'm going to break down each matchup, see which underdogs I think might hit, see which favorites you should be worried about, and which ones are absolute locks. Before we get into it, just a big thank you to everybody who subscribed to the channel. I put a lot of work and time into these videos, and seeing it be appreciated and enjoyed by you guys is all the motivation I need to continue. So just a massive thank you for that. I really appreciate it. So the first fight of the night is Veronica Macedo versus Juliana Miller. Juliana Miller actually won the Ultimate Fighter. She's the one who won the last season of it. In the final fight of TUF, she had a great performance. That was her last fight. So they're kind of throwing her into the actual UFC now. She's very green in terms of her actual pro mixed martial arts fights, but she's shown to be very well-rounded, shown to have a good heart, shown to have a big chip on her shoulder as well. She believes she's going to be a very big prospect in the division. So that's what you like to see from somebody who you think is going to win. Now, what I want to know is who is she going up against and what sort of challenges are they going to pose to her? So Veronica's at a big size disadvantage in this matchup. She's also coming off of quite the losing and inconsistent streak in her UFC career. It really does look to me like they're posing the new star, giving her a matchup that'll test her, but is beatable. However, as you guys know from last weekend, just because somebody's on a UFC losing streak doesn't mean that they can't improve. Veronica is still fairly young. She hasn't fought in 3 years, so there's been a significant amount of time before her last performance and now. So you could see some good room for improvement there, which is a little bit worrying in terms of calling Juliana a lock. However, I do think Juliana will be able to get through it. I do think she'll get the win. Don't be surprised if you see her have a little bit tougher of a test than the odds makers may make it look like. Moving on up, we have Herbert versus Ludovit Klein. This one was an interesting matchup for me. Herbert's got the height advantage, a little bit of a reach advantage. Both of them are good strikers. I'm going to be picking Ludovit Klein in this matchup. Klein loves to mix it up. He loves to lure his opponents in and make them fight at his pace. He's very technical and he's a very good counter puncher. He's also got really strong kicks, really strong power in his hands, so he's an absolute threat to finish at any point. Herbert, however, good striker, fast, brings a crazy pace. However, he's shown to be a little bit chinny in his career, and I do think that for him to win, he has to engage Klein at his game. He's got to engage him in the striking. Hasn't shown to be a crazy grappler, and when you look at that matchup, I think Klein's the more technical, I think he's the more accurate, and you think he hits harder, so all of that should lead to a Klein victory. I'm really excited to watch this matchup, though. It should be a good back and forward for a little while, but I do see Klein just sort of landing the harder blows, landing more volume, and either finishing or getting a pretty confident, easy decision. Something like 30-27, 29-28, but I do not see a split decision or going anywhere that close in this matchup. Moving on up, we have Jennifer Maia versus Casey O'Neill. Another interesting one, right? Because Jennifer Maia is on a little bit of a losing streak, but she's fighting like the absolute best of that division. And Casey O'Neill is a prospect coming off of an ACL tear injury that she's recovered from. She's coming back now. She's fairly young, so I don't think it'll play too much into the fight, but it is something to be interested about, right? So the X factor for me in this fight is, can Maia outpace Neil? Because Neil likes to do some striking, but mainly clinch you up against the cage, take you down, wear on you. She's a pressure fighter. You can hear it in her fights. Her coaches are telling her, more pressure, go for it, in between every round, right? That's the type of fighter she's trying to be. Whereas Maia, she's shown to be able to hang in those types of exchanges. She went 5 rounds with Valentina Shevchenko in the 4th and 5th round after being taken down, being worked. She was still there. She was still trying to do some damage. She still lost that fight convincingly, and she is older in age, but she has shown to be able to not be bullied around too much in those areas. And she also has good submissions from the bottom. She's gotten a few tricky ones in her career, so it's a little bit of an interesting matchup. I'm going to be picking Casey O'Neill in this one. I think the youth of her will give her more energy and be able to keep that pace up and outwork Jennifer Maia, but she's got to be careful doing takedowns and when she's on top. I wouldn't be surprised to see Jennifer Maia even get a takedown or something like that in this. It's a much closer matchup to me than the odds makers lay it out to believe. I wouldn't be betting on this matchup. I'm just going to watch it because I could very well see a Maia upset. Gun to my head, I would be picking Casey O'Neill. I just think that youth and her styles will be a good matchup for Maia, so long as she can avoid the submissions. Next up, we have Jake Haley versus Malcolm Gordon. This one's interesting because you have Jake Haley. He's more of a prospect. He's younger, good jiu-jitsu guy, got some crazy submissions on his record and is shown to be very knowledgeable and skilled in that area, going up against Malcolm Gordon, who's never been the most consistent in his career, but his last fight was against Mohammad Mokaev. If you don't know Mohammad Mokaev, that guy is a wizard of a grappler, very well-rounded, fights at a high pace. He's looked at to be one of the future champions in the division, and he took him all the way to the 3rd round, almost finished him at certain points. Like, he had me on the edge of my seat because I had Mohammad on a parlay that fight, and I was looking at this like, oh my god, how did I overlook this, right? So that being said, don't sleep on Malcolm Gordon. My man has good jiu-jitsu himself, good wrestling himself, okay striking, not too crazy in that department, going up against a jiu-jitsu guy. So the way I see this playing out is they're both going to engage in jiu-jitsu. Malcolm might even go for a takedown and try some offensive jiu-jitsu himself. And one of them is going to get sub. Jake is the better jiu-jitsu artist in my opinion. I think that he will be able to sub Malcolm Gordon, but I would not be surprised at all to see a Malcolm Gordon sub upset here. Betting wise, Malcolm Gordon by sub probably gives you crazy odds, and if he wins, that's probably how he'll do it. Some sort of reverse sub, or while they're grappling and rolling around, maybe he catches him in something that he's not expecting. But most likely, Jake will be able to win this one. Again, gun to my head, I'm picking Jake. Betting wise, a scary matchup. The odds are kind of making this look like Jake's going to run right through him, and he very well may, but Malcolm has shown to be able to hang there with a very good grappler, put that very good grappler almost out, and that was his very last fight. So this is an interesting one. I'm looking forward to seeing it, but I'm going to be going with Jake Hadley. Moving on up, we have Leroy Duncan versus Dusko Todorovic. This one is very interesting to me. This is Leroy's debut, and Dusko is a 50-50 fighter recently. They're both strikers. Dusko is crazy. He just loves to get in the pocket, swang and bang, and that's why sometimes he'll get them and it can happen, and sometimes he'll lose and that can also happen. It's usually by finish either way, and I see Leroy being able to get the better of him in this matchup, right? I think that it's pretty obvious what this guy's game plan is. Leroy has good technical striking. He's shown to be good in the pocket. I do think that Leroy is going to be able to get this one done. However, a lot of scary ones to bet on this card, to be completely honest. Like, I could see a lot of them going either way, just the way the matchups are. I'm going to be picking Leroy in this one. I do think the prospect gets it done. I think he succeeds in his UFC debut, but it's going to be a fun one to watch. Moving on up, we have Mohammad Mokaev versus Jafel, Cavalcante, Filho. I can almost guarantee I butchered that. I'm sorry. My pick right out the gate is going to be Mohammad Mokaev. This guy, again, he's a future champion. He's so good. He did have a tough test in his last one where it went harder than I think the audience and he believed it would, where he had to show some real grit and some real determination to not quit, which he did. But this one, again, is interesting because they're putting him up against a good grappler again, a guy with tons of submissions on his record, tons of tricky ones too from being on his back, has shown some good suplexes and good offensive wrestling in his career, sort of things that Mohammad Mokaev sort of was a little bit exposed for in his last fight, right? So there definitely is a possibility for an upset in this one. For the odds at -800 for Mohammad Mokaev, don't take that, don't touch it. This is one you should watch from the edge of your seat. Hope that Mohammad has fixed some of the holes in his game, and I think he has, and I think he will win. But my God, -800 is crazy. Don't bet Mohammad Mokaev on this one money line unless you're really confident that he's fixed those holes. But I'm telling you, stylistically, the matchup he has ahead of him, it's not like he's going up against a striker who has okay wrestling defense. He's going up against a guy who grappling is his bread and butter, just like Mohammad Mokaev. So anything can happen. Like, that is a little bit of a recipe for an upset, but we'll see. Moving on up, we have Sam Patterson versus Yanal Ashmoz. I'm picking Sam Patterson in this one. This guy's another crazy offensive grappler. There's quite a lot of them on this card, so you'll probably see a lot of submissions. However, going up against a wild striker who is shown to have some serious KO power in his hands, right? So there's always that chance that maybe he's having an off night, he isn't able to get the takedown or get to him and grapple as much, and he's getting pegged and tagged in the feet. Could totally see that happening. However, I think Yanel's going to be a little too wild. Usually that leaves you overexposed 4 takedowns and 4 grappling, and I think it'll actually work against him most likely. So I'm picking Sam Patterson in this one with confidence. I think he'll get this one done first round, so sub type of deal, but there's always that chance he gets clipped, gets hurt, and gets taken out. This is his UFC debut, so sometimes UFC jitters can be a thing, but I think this guy will get it done. Moving on up, we have Jack Shore versus Makwan Amirkhani. Jack Shore is a big prospect in the UFC. Good striking, a little bit of a crazy fighter, has shown some good grappling as well, but pretty well-rounded guy. Going up against Makwan, who isn't having the most consistent UFC career. He has fought some decent competition, but hasn't really ever shown to be a consistent winner. The way Jack Shore lost his last fight was basically in the firefight, fell down, got jumped on, and got subbed. That's the type of thing Makwan does. He's actually done that type of thing in his career, had some tricky submissions in the middle of a firefight. Like, he's known to be able to jump on you quickly. So that is a little worrying. However, I don't think Jack Shore is going to let that happen twice in a row. Just something I thought I would point out. My pick is going to be Jack Shore in this one. I think he should be able to get this one done fairly easily. Hopefully I'm not jinxing anything with that, but I am picking Jack Shore with confidence here. Now, this is a matchup you do not want to sleep on. You have Lerone Murphy going up against Gabriel Santos. So this is Gabriel's UFC debut. My man's a killer. He's a future prospect in his own right. Has fought some decent competition, has dismantled them fairly easily. He's essentially a good striker who is not afraid to use good grappling, and that he has against you as well in the matchup. However, he's going up against Lerone Murphy, kind of a similar boat, but he's got the height and reach advantage over Gabriel, and he's been in the UFC longer, fought the tougher competition in my opinion, and has done very well against them. The odds are a little bit wider than they should be on this one. I think Gabriel possesses better offensive wrestling than Lerone, and if Gabriel's able to close the distance with his striking, get in, get on top of Lerone, totally see that happening. Could totally see some big ground and pound and maybe even a submission out of Gabriel. But what I think is more likely, I think Lerone will be able to manage the distance. He might get taken down once, but he also might take him down during the middle of some sort of transitions. He's shown to be able to do that in the past. Lerone hits harder, I believe. He's shown to have much more impact on each of his blows from when he fights his opponents, so that's a big factor. And then you're also giving him the height and the reach. So I'm going to be picking Lerone in this one, but yet another one that really could go either way. Like some cards, you look at them and you're like, okay, I'm pretty sure I know this dude's going to win with confidence. There's some good matchups on this card, guys, so don't be sleeping. Some of the odds are a little bit wild for what the actual likelihood of winning is in the fight, but that being said, we're going Lerone Murphy for the win. Moving on up, we have Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze, and this one is going to be a banger. My God. So I actually wasn't too familiar with Roman. I had to do a lot of research and watch some of his past fights before filming this. He's essentially somebody who is malicious and vicious from every single spot. He could be on his back and just throwing absolute full power elbows that are doing damage. He kicks hard, he punches hard. Not the best footwork, but not the worst either. He's more of a counter puncher that isn't also willing to come at you. Matching up against Marvin Vettori, who's a pressure fighter, can take a shot. He likes to mix up clinch work, wrestling. He really wants to wear you down, make you tired. Marvin usually takes a good amount of shots though. He didn't take too many in the Paulo Costa fight, but in most of his fights he is there to be hit. I think it's something that fighting Israel and fighting Robert will help him be better at not being hit, but that's something that's going to be the X factor in this. If Roman is consistently clipping Marvin over and over, I don't know how well Marvin will take it after 3 rounds. Like Roman really does seem to have some sort of special power and ability to him. That being said, the only fighters to beat Marvin recently are Izzy and Robert Whittaker, who use footwork like a motherfucker. They are excellent counter punchers and they're very fast. I don't think that Roman is as fast as either of them. I don't think his footwork is as good as either of them. I think he hits harder and I think he's pretty accurate as well. So I believe Marvin will be able to get this one done. I think those bouts with Robert and Izzy will play a big factor in him being able to get better with his head movement, get better with his defense, and just keep that same pressure that he's good and known for. Just again, the X factor is how many of these shots from Roman can he take before he's getting him up against the clinch and playing Marvin's game. I don't think Marvin's going to want to stand in the middle of the octagon and play with this guy for too long. He's going to want to push him up against the cage, maybe get some takedowns, though again, this guy's nasty from his back, so he's not going to be safe there. Either way, whether Marvin wins or loses this, he's going to come out looking like mashed potatoes with too much ketchup all over it. Like he's going to look absolutely fucked up by the end of this fight. I'm pretty confident in that, the way that these guys match up, but I am picking Marvin Vettori here. I do think he's just got more experience at a higher level. He's fought the better competition and he's shown to be able to take a goddamn good punch. If he didn't have such a good chin, I would be very, very worried for him in this fight, but I think his chin will hold up. I think his pressure will tire Roman out a little bit more than he's used to, and I think Marvin will get this one done. Moving on up, we have Gunnar Nelson versus Bryan Barberena. This one's a fairly easy pick for me. I think Gunnar's going to be able to use his grappling and his submission game to be able to win this one. Bryan Barberena likes to get in the pocket, likes to do some wild punches, lots of looping punches as well. He leaves many opportunities for a good grappler to get a hold of him and do their thing. You look at his fight against Rafael dos Anjos. I know Rafael is stronger than Gunnar Nelson, but he was able to pretty much manhandle Bryan in the grappling exchanges, and that was only Bryan's last fight. So whether or not he's worked on it, I don't think it'll be enough to stop Gunnar. I think Gunnar's going to be a smart fighter and use that as his game plan, and I see Gunnar Nelson getting a crazy little hype submission in this one. Gunnar by sub would be a pretty good prop bet to look at. Moving on up, we have Joanne Wood versus Luana Carolina, and I have no idea why this one's on the main event. It should be on the bottom of the prelims. Joanna's a good fighter, but she's at the end of her career. Realistically, I would say she's the better fighter in this matchup. Luana is really nothing special either. Joanna's like 37 years old. She's coming off so many losses to good competition. I don't think she plans on being in the UFC for much longer. This wouldn't surprise me if it was her retirement fight. Whereas this is Luana's life at the moment and her foreseeable future, right? So her why is certainly a lot bigger in this. That doesn't always really matter, but I think when the going gets tough, really that does kind of come down to it at certain times in certain fights, and I could see it coming down to that in this one. I see Joanne Wood being a little bit better on the feet, but as the fight progresses, I see her being outworked by Luana, and Luana being able to get this one done on decision. So I'm taking the upset here. I'm taking Luana Carolina to get the victory over Joanna. Luana's like plus 200, so that's pretty interesting, and hopefully I'm right. I think the odds are like that because, again, Joanne Wood is the better fighter. I think when you watch them fight, she does look more crisp, but she's also shown to get finished and sort of get tired and not quit on herself, but just not be her best self lately. So I do think that the odds are a little ridiculous here. I think that this is sort of bait to get a lot of people to take the minus 200 Joanne. Don't do it. Even if you disagree with me and you think Joanne wins, do yourself a favor. Do not put Joanne Wood at hit like the top of 8 different 8-leg parlays. You'll be kicking yourself in the nuts, I promise. Moving on up to the co-main event, we have Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. Get your popcorn. This fight is fucking awesome. I cannot wait for this one. Both of them like to stand and bang. Both of them are absolute violent workhorses. They both produce awesome finishes. Justin's at a later point in his career. He's had more wars, and if you actually look at the striking guys he's beaten, arguably some favorable matchups, right? You have Michael Chandler, who isn't the most technical guy. He hits hard, but super hittable. I mean, I think we can all agree on that, the way he fights. You have Tony Ferguson, who is at the start of the end of his career there, so that's almost like a write-off. And then Justin obviously got dismantled in the grappling department a few times. So I know that Justin overall is a good striker. He's shown to smarten up and be a lot more defensively sound, which he'll need in this fight. And he still hits hard, still has massive good leg kicks. The matchup here is pretty tough ask for him, right? Rafael Fiziev is no doubtedly a harder striking fight than Justin has had in arguably 5 years. And Rafael has not yet touched that interim belt. He's not yet touched gold. He's on his momentum is on the upswing is my point here. And that doesn't always matter, but sometimes it does play a factor in terms of how hard and how willing they are to keep going through the damage. This is like throwing 2 Beyblades from back in the day inside of one of those rings. They're just going to go. And I think that Justin, his body, his mentality will start to cave a little earlier than Fiziev. I don't see there's going to be any quit in Fiziev. I also think Fiziev's going to have a higher pace. He's going to be able to throw more volume throughout the fight and make it trickier and harder to predict on Justin because he's wild. So that being said, unless Justin finishes him, I don't see Justin landing more strikes or out-voluming him. I could see Fiziev just getting a decision on this one. Justin is tough, or maybe a sort of third round, second round finish by Fiziev. However, Justin's a very live underdog in this one too. You can get him at like plus 200. He's still a great fighter, and he still has any shot at winning any striking battle. Let's not kid that. It's not impossible he wins this, but gun to my head, I'm going to be picking Rafael Fiziev here. Moving on to the main event, we have Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards. The trilogy matchup is here. I cannot wait for this fight, guys. I know you guys are excited as well. I just spent 25 minutes watching the whole second fight back just to make sure I get this prediction right, and I'm going to be taking Kamaru Usman to win here. So the biggest things I looked at in their previous fight was when Kamaru got knocked out in that 5th round. How did Leon get back up from the first takedown? And I actually thought Leon had more success in that fight, thinking back on it, at getting back up from Kamaru than he actually did. Almost every takedown Kamaru got Leon up against the fence. He sort of pile drived his body on him and just held him there and did a little bit of damage and scored points and won the round. Leon didn't really show any good ability to get back to his feet. In fact, the 5th round when Leon was separated was because of Herb Dean essentially saying, fuck, Kamaru hasn't really done too much for 3 rounds other than clinch work. Let's see some action here, and separated him, right? So it's really going to depend on how eager to separate the ref is. But I think Kamaru's going to look back at that and go, okay, so this guy couldn't really get up from me. The only reason he got up was either the round ended or a ref separated me for the most part. I'm going to make sure I do just enough damage and do more damage in those positions to not have a ref separate with me. Because you know Kamaru's going to come in this and go, okay, I'm not striking with this guy again. Like, maybe I'll do a little bit to mix it in to get to the wrestling, but a guy head kick KOs you out of nowhere like that, your game plan isn't going to be to go box with him, you know what I'm saying? Especially when he had such good success pushing him up against the fence and doing that original Kamaru Usman work. The only times that it was really close and competitive was the 1st round when Leon got a really good foot sweep, got on top of Kamaru and held full mount and even got his back. Like Kamaru couldn't get up from that position either, which is interesting, right? But I don't see it being something you can bank on Leon implementing into his game round after round. I think Kamaru's going to win most of the grappling exchanges and be able to win that battle, and I think that's how this fight's going to be won. I think it's going to be a little bit more boring than you guys are expecting. You know, it's not going to be a stand and bang war. I really don't think. If Kamaru's smart, it won't be. And it's really, really tough to beat a guy who's coming there just to grab you, hold you, and take you down. He's not coming there to strike, because that's your opportunities to knock someone out, really, is either that or catch him when he's shooting in, right? So that's Leon's chances here. I just see it being far more likely for Kamaru to be able to implement his game plan than Leon is to implement his, because you can't bank on Leon getting like a last second KO again. Although I'm not saying it was luck, it was set up. You could watch that. I just don't think it's something you can bet on really re-happening. And a big point people are making is, oh, the last fight was at altitude, so Leon's going to have more cardio. But Kamaru Usman also is going to have more cardio by that argument. I know Kamaru trains at altitude, so he's more used to it. But when you train at altitude and you come down and fight at normal altitude, that usually gives you even more cardio. It makes it easier to breathe. It allows you to push the pace even more. So I don't think that is anything in Leon's favor. In fact, it might even hurt him, realistically, the way Kamaru fights. I'm going to have a full breakdown on how exactly Kamaru Usman can win this fight coming up this week, as well as how exactly Leon Edwards can win this fight coming up this week. So I'll save that for those videos. That's going to be it for this one. Kamaru Usman is my pick. So that's the full card top to bottom. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and for watching my fight week content. I make videos like this every single UFC card. We are a new channel, however, I'm looking to grow and improve. So just a big thank you to everybody who's left comments for feedback, you know, subscribed, all those things. It really motivates me to just keep going with this, and I'm pretty confident we'll be able to grow this channel pretty big someday. So if you guys like what I'm doing, you like my vibe, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and keep coming back for more fight week content because I enjoy talking to you guys about this stuff. So I will see you in the next one.